Well, hello everyone. Happy Saturday. Time for another live reading. I see you guys are getting in position there. I wore my favorite T-shirt for you guys. Live fast, eat trash. I love door dashing in that shirt. It makes people laugh. How you guys doing today? Hopefully you doing all right. Come down for some more great stories and some more great times. Oh, Zeronan's here. Nice. For those of you who haven't been here as long as he has, Zeronan is one of my oldest friends, and he's been listening to my stories since middle school. So he's been down for the struggle for quite a while. But I'm glad he could make it to a live stream. Nice, nice. Well, we're just glad you're here, man. We Cannibal Lou used to. Well, we have a very special guest tonight. It's someone we've waited for quite a while. Look at this thing. I finally got him in. It is, it's not the size I wanted, but I guess that's fine. It's very nice. It's got good hand feel, you know? It's over 300 pages, it says. It doesn't look like 300 pages, but it is complete. I checked them. But yeah, made that cover myself. So, if you're on our Ghostly Reader tier, you can expect to get yours in the next couple of weeks, depending on how fast your postal service runs. If not, I'll have a couple of extra copies that I can sell, or you can head over to Amazon and pick up your own copy. I will go ahead and... Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I just had it. I am so unprepared for these. There it is. Our special guest got tired, sorry. Okay. There. You can get your own copy of Douglas Gage Beyond Savings at the link down there, so I can continue to enjoy things like electricity and water. But no pressure or anything. I DoorDash for money. I do this for fun. But yeah, it looks really good. If you are a part of the Ghostly Reader tier, or you you order one from me. Of course, they usually come signed. I had to apologize to somebody the other day because she had bought a copy, and scatterbrained me, I had grabbed the wrong one off my shelf. So I have a signed copy for her somewhere around here. I'm sure I'll come across it when I have to sell a few. Oh no, Leia, I'm sorry. That's terrible. I hope your phone battery lasts for the live. I hope the power comes back on first. That would be even better. Osiris, you are not late. We have only been running for 7 minutes, my guy. You are perfectly fine. Hello to everyone who has come in. It looks like Blondie, my favorite tireless mod, Leia, Zeronan, Cannibal Lou's here. Cool. El Gusto, and Osiris. Man, the gang's all here tonight, and Kathy, and all of you lurking in the background. Welcome. Thanks for coming in. Alrighty, so this week I think we've got a Ranger Tale for Monday. I've got a very interesting Kashmir story this week, and we're going to finish it off with Mr. Seraph's first official story in Kashmir, where he gets some talent from the last person in town that you might expect. So then, of course, we've got the next two installments in the Indians of Kawakala Mall. It turned out to be a 5-parter, so we'll finish that up next week. Might even turn out to be a 6. I don't know. Sometimes I start writing these things and they just get out of hand. Leia, you are just having a terrible time, my friend. I hate that. No power, no car. You're just kind of stuck with us. Oh, nice. I'm glad you're enjoying your security job, Blondie. That's been the fun thing about DoorDash is I actually enjoy doing it. It turned out to be really fun. Just kind of puddle around and give people their food. Trying to think if we've got any news. Well, the Dollar General books are out. Again, if you're part of my Ghostly Reader tier, I'm going to start shipping those next week. So if you're on the Patreon, be sure that that I get an updated address. Unless you just want me to send it to your old one. Otherwise, I'm just going to start sending them out next week. There's a post office in town here that I haven't checked out yet that I'm excited to go have a look at. What else? I've been working on a collaboration with, I think I talked about this last week, with the guy from the Pine story that I linked up, that I had done voice work for. We're doing he's doing it. I'm helping him write it. It's a series on the old Goosebumps books where his character visits notable sites. So look out for that. And, of course, I'll put up links and stuff. Oh, yeah, the story contest. You've still got 6 days to get your story in. Make sure you've sent it to the right email address. That's the one I'm going to be checking for story stuff. Though if you've already sent it to my other one, I'll see if I can find it. Stuff gets lost over there sometimes. But yeah, if you're entering the story contest, it's 1,000 to 5,000 words. Has to be there before the 15th. Judging will be the next 15 days, and then I will choose my winner on the last day of the month. Winner gets a signed copy of a book. Could be one of the Douglas Gage ones. I don't know. That's up to you. Make sure that your content is channel appropriate. If it's not, we'll have to disqualify you. I'm sorry. I might like it, but if YouTube is gonna kick me off the platform for reading it, then I'm not gonna be able to read it. We'll probably post some of them up as our Tuesday, Thursday slot stories, so that you guys can hear them too, once we narrow it down to top 3. Top 3 or top 4, I don't know. We'll figure something out. So yeah, that's what we've got to look forward to there. Well, no, Leia, wait till the end of the live stream. No, don't do that. Don't do that at all. The shooting yourself part, not the waiting till the end of the live stream part. But anyway, so I guess we'll get rolling here. Don't forget to check out the audiobooks that I link in the community. I'm up to my 3rd one that I've narrated. So eventually I'm going to put some of my stuff up on Audible. I've got to figure out how to do that. It doesn't look terribly difficult. Not like you couldn't just listen to everything here, but it's a great way to support me. Because I get 100% of that if I narrate it myself. I don't have to play around with half royalties on that one. But yeah, so that's what we got going on. Same as usual. Well, on that note, let's get set up and we will read some stories. Get my Audacity set up here so that I can record some stories. You guys are actually great for my productivity, if I've never told you that. Alrighty. So, I can tell you, not the week coming up, but not this Monday, but next Monday, there will be a new Black Site 12 story. So be on the lookout for that, because that will be pretty cool, I hope. I'm working on it right now. We've covered everybody else's midterms at the Black Site, except for Masha's. So we'll be covering Masha's midterm, which, again, Should be pretty fun. And without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start with our Monday story, which is a ranger tale about mountain spirits. So, if I can get this, there we go. I don't care if I can see me, I just want to see the comment section. All right, we're going to get going with this one. It's called The Mountain Spirit. Hang on, gotta do some prep work here. Yay, good to see you, Kevin. When I go to narrate stuff, I always use Buchanan brand chapstick, so that my lips don't get chapped. Plus, it makes my mustache soft. Hey, Grim Reader's here. Nice. Welcome, buddy. We're glad you could make it. We're just about to start some stories. Doing pretty well, friend. Doing pretty well. As good as a human being can do. Thanks. I'm only in here until my oldest finds his own place, and then I'll be back in my cave in the back of the house. But it's a nice space. It's very cozy. I like it. Any rate, let's start with our ranger tale, The Mountain Spirit. So much of what we do here is mundane and a little boring. For every lost hiker or animal attack, there's a week or more of nothing. Even our park, which is a little more active than others, can be a little dead sometimes. It was the beginnings of what would become autumn, and the leaves were changing. The animals were getting ready to hibernate, and the guests we had were now interested in taking pictures more than swimming or camping. We still had a fair share of hikers and backpackers, but the season was going to rattle down soon as winter encroached. We'd still have to be here during the winter, but the hours were likely to be scaled back, and the duties would be mostly keeping the place from filling up with snow. Make this a little bigger. My eyesight's bad. There we go. So when the call came in about the missing boy, I was just sitting at my desk and trying not to fall asleep. The family had lost their son, and it was all hands on deck. I called the other two rangers at my post, and we went down to the Komodo site for briefing. The Komodo site is more like a glorified picnic area, but there are some bathrooms and a playground for the kiddos. It was the last place he had been seen, so we were hoping to get there in time to find him. Ranger Mac was over the search, Drill Instructor Mac, as we called him, and he had all of us lined up along with a couple of the quicker guys from Search and Rescue. Hang on, try that again. There we go. Voice is extra crispy today. And he had all of us lined up, along with a couple of the quicker guys from Search and Rescue. Rangers, Dustin Fern went missing from the playground there. He pointed to the colorful play area. About 2 hours ago. His parents, Margaret and Dennis... Blech. Hold up. Ooh, try that one again. Oh no, Grim. Oh no. I record while I read, and then I edit while I read too. It's a mess sometimes. Okay, let's see. His parents, Margaret and Dennis Fern, were in the picnic area when they noticed he was gone. The father searched for an hour before they pulled the parking service. Bleh. It's usually pretty natural when I can do it. The father searched for an hour. Now, let me make sure we got the right part on that. We're off to a shaky start if you're just joining us, but it usually gets a little smoother as it goes on. Okay. The father searched for an hour before they called the park service, and now we're here to see if we can't turn this kid up before nightfall. So let's get at it. Take walkie-talkies, take supplies, get moving. I want check-ins every hour. There's no sense in any of you getting lost too while we're looking for this kid. We split off then, hopes high, and energy peaked, but that was 3 days ago. In the last 3 days, we've been unable to find the kid, and we've been contending with a sudden windstorm that's been buffeting the mountain for days. It's been kicking up a little dust. Uh-oh. Oh no. There we go. Okay. It's been kicking up little dust devils for a while now, and it's made the kid's tracks difficult to find. The speaking... Bah. Speaking of poor little Dustin, no one else has seen hide nor hair of him either. He left nothing behind to help us out, and it's like the kid just vanished. Before you ask, yes, I went to check the old station in the woods, and no, I couldn't find the forest train. If the kid is riding the rails, then he's doing it alone. If you're just joining us, we're reading Ranger Tales, The Mountain Spirit. So, pull up a chair. I feel that, Grim. I get that, too. Hi, Diane. We're glad you made it. You're not that late. Mac insisted that we do this in pairs, and we've been searching non-stop, so there's not a lot of time. We've been searching non-stop, so there's been plenty of time for chatter. I've been looking around with Jacob. Yeah, that Jacob. And he's been steering us closer and closer to the mountain as time goes on. He justifies this by saying that the mountain isn't that far from the campground, the mountain not being far from most things, and that if the kid was looking for shelter, then he might have headed towards it. There's a lot of caves and things around the base of the mountain. Maybe he took refuge in one of them. We both grabbed our hats as a dust devil rolled past, and as it spun itself out, Jacob watched it go with some interest. I wish the wind would calm down a little bit, I groused as I got back moving, searching the ground for signs that weren't likely to be there. I heard a story once that dust devils were a sign of favor from the mountain owl, Jacob said, as casually as most people would discuss the weather. The mountain owl? I asked, the two of us continuing our search. Yeah, haven't you... Blech. If I could talk today. Let's see. It's Lady Vengeance. Nice. Oh, this is one of mine, Grim. I wrote this one. I always read mine on the Saturday, and then I read the guest stories on Sunday. Such as they are, we're down to 2 a week at this point. Let's see. Yeah. Haven't you seen the kiosk in the ranger station? Nope. Yeah. Haven't you seen the kiosk in the park center? I had, and I suddenly remembered what he was talking about. The old Native American legend about the mountain spirit, right? Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. How very thoughtful. I really do appreciate you guys' donations and tips. It means a lot. Oh, yeah. Jacob nodded. My grandma told me about it when I was little. She had a touch of the Native American blood in her. At least, she claimed to. And she had grown up in the community and heard a lot of the old stories. The mountain god, just called the Great Owl by the locals, was something she talked about a lot. He apparently brought the winds, moved the rains, and protected the tribes from outsiders. I guess he did a pretty good job, until the people with the guns came along. I had to plant my feet as another dust devil tried to push me into the nearest tree. What was he supposed to do? I asked, glancing around as we talked and finding my gaze straying back to the dust devil. He protects the tribe, but he also protected the kids. There was a story she used to tell about a kid who was lost in the woods, who was taken by the owl for 7 days and 7 nights. When the search party found him, the kid said the owl spirit had fed him and kept him safe. He also claimed to have shared great knowledge with him, and the kid had no idea how much time had passed. He was supposed to have gone on to be a great chief or spiritual leader or both, and he attributed the knowledge he had gained from the owl to his success. Keep in mind, this was a long, long time ago, before the settlers ever got here, so who knows if there's any truth to it or not. Let's see. If you're just joining us, we are reading Ranger Tales, The Mountain Spirit. So, pull up a chair. Grim, I think you're like my biggest fan. Goodness. It's definitely, I don't know if I deserve it or not, but it's definitely appreciated. I watched it go, the little tornado heading back towards the mountain before fizzling out. Did the legend happen to say how they found the kid? Jacob thought about it for a moment. Not really, only that they did. The kiosk in the main center says the natives sometimes attributed the winds to the owl spirit, and that those who followed them may find something they seek. I'd taken a couple of steps towards the track the dust devil had been going on, when my radio crackled and Ranger Mac came over. Group 2B, status report. I lifted the headset to my mouth and told him that we had no updates at the moment. Thank you, Grim. Well, Grim, we'll have to touch base after the fact. I've got a bunch. I need to get back on Reddit and start putting up some. I was putting them up pretty regular last week, but I got distracted. Well, lady, we're glad you stopped by. We're sorry to see you go, but we're always glad to see you. Let's see. Affirmative. Return to the center. We'll get another team out there so you can get some rest. Jacob sighed. Looks like our shift's over. Let's go get some grub and maybe a nap. I kept looking at the mountain, but between my yawns and my growling stomach, I knew it was time to pack it in. Jacob and I were eating chili in the mess tent when I heard a few of the others. Yeah. If I could keep my chatter up here. I heard a few of the other search parties talking. The wind is getting rough out there, one of them was saying. It's probably about to drop a real frog drowner on us. The wind... I tried to go back up. Hey, Susie Q. We're glad you could make it. Nah, said Nash, another one of the rangers from my post. It's just a geezer. It's too late in the season for a real hard rain. It's strange, though, he said, getting chili in his beard as he scratched it with a spoon. It almost seems to be pushing us towards something. You think? I asked, drawing the attention of both of the older men. Well, yeah. Haven't you noticed? It's been pushing us towards the mountain. I don't know if I believe it's a sign or something, but it's damn weird. Has anyone checked around the mountain? Asked the first guy. Nope, said Nash. It's too far. The little fellow would have had to walk damn near 3 miles to get there. We'd have found something by now if he had. Well, Jacob piped up, they better find him soon. After 4 days, they're likely to scale it back. After 7, they'll call it. Most of us will be sent back to our post after tomorrow. As I sat there eating, listening to them talk about their own searches, I looked back at the mountain and couldn't help but listen to the wind and remember what Jacob had said. It was pretty unlikely that he was at the mountain. Nash was right about that, but the wind did seem to be pushing us in that direction. It had helped the natives find things. Maybe it was trying to help us, too. Jacob stopped me as I started heading towards the mountain, asking me where I was going. I told him I was going to go have a look around the base of the mountain, and instead of trying to stop me, he offered to come along. "That's worth crossing off, if nothing else," he said, and the two of us headed into the woods. The sun was setting, and pretty soon we had our flashlights out as the wind sent the trees rattling. The park wasn't all that different at night, but you definitely had to watch where you stepped. We came out of the thick woods and into the scraggy area between the trees and the mountain. The wind was really whipping up now, and instead of planting myself against it, I let it pull me. I could hear an owl not too far away, though it sounded like a normal-sized owl instead of some monster spirit bird. The closer we got, the more it seemed to be pulling us towards the southern face. There was a big cave system near there, but I couldn't imagine anyone going there after dark. The caves on this side of the mountain would be full of shale and loose rocks, and they'd be pretty uncomfortable for a kid sleeping rough. The more the wind pushed and the more the dust devils blew, the more I began to think I was right, though. When we found the cave empty, it took some of the starch out of my sails. "Look," Jacob half whispered, and I pointed my light into the corner he'd been indicating. There, curled up on a nest of leaves and sticks, was the kid. He looked dirty, probably hungry, but none the worse for wear. We scooped him up. He was dehydrated and wobbly, and we came back into the rescue camp like conquering heroes. Mrs. Fern took her son from me, and I wasn't sure the kid was going to touch ground again until he was 30. Jacob and I got accommodations from the Park Service, and the governor sent us both medals for a job well done. For the kid's part, he said he'd seen a squirrel and went chasing after it, getting lost before he knew what had happened. He wandered around in the woods, calling for help and looking for his parents, and then fallen asleep under a tree. He woke up in the cave. Someone had put him in the little nest, and every now and again he would find food lying on the floor. It was usually granola bars or some kind of berries, but it had kept him fed until we found him. Sometimes there were bottles of water, too, but they had been less frequent. The kid didn't know where he was, so he had tried staying put until we found him, and it was a lucky thing we had. The paramedics who looked over him said that he'd probably have succumbed to dehydration in a couple of days if he hadn't started getting regular water, and that made his rescue all the more heroic as far as anyone else was concerned. Personally, I was just glad to get back to doing nothing until the park's next disaster comes our way. There you go. That's our Ranger tale for the week. Not a long story, but a goodie. Well, Lou, that sounds pretty good. I wish I had something to smoke, honestly. But I'm trying to give it up. Let's see. I think next we're going to go to our Kashmir story. Thank you, Blondie. If you're just joining us, we've finished our Monday story. Thank you, Karen. And now we're moving on to our Wednesday story, which is going to be our Kashmir story. The one about the town of Kashmir, as opposed to some of the characters we have there. This one might be about a familiar character, if you remember back to our early episodes of Dr. Winters. Some of you might remember the man with the black eyes in a very particular story. I'm going to turn the fan on. If you guys will look at my moose pajamas. Oh. If you guys remember the story about the man with the black eyes, then this fellow here might seem a little familiar. So we're finally going to put a name to him, and we'll see what he's been up to. So, this one's called Eye in the Sky. So I hope you enjoy it. I like Kashmir stories too, Karen. They're definitely some of my favorite stuff. Corey watched the cameras that sat on the wall of his little listening station outside of Kashmir. To the noise... If I could talk. To the nosy or the industrious, the road that led to the black site would look like nothing so much as an abandoned logging road, or an overgrown hiking trail. But little did they know what lay beyond it. Corey had been back here for... Corey had to take a long sip of his coffee as he thought about it. It was less than 5 years, he knew that, but it had been longer than a year, too. He'd killed that nosy reporter more than 3 years ago, so it had to be longer than that. 3 years, he finally decided, but there wasn't a lot of conviction in it. It was like that when you lived near Kashmir. Time got very slippery, and it was hard to remember where you had been or how long you'd been there. Corey didn't have a family. Most of the black site guys didn't, and it made it harder to remember things when you lacked touchstones. Corey didn't have a wife, no kids, no parents to ask why he wasn't at Christmas dinner. He'd been in Iraq before this. Yeah, let's try this again. He had been in Iraq before this, though. Sometimes. That seemed like a lifetime ago. He'd been involved in a nasty bit of business over there. Something that made it necessary to disappear from the face of the earth pretty quickly. Corey had been a good soldier, though. Done what he was told and never batted an eye at it. And that was how he had ended up at a post like this. His only real connection to the world outside of Kashmir was BJ, his handler. Once a week, BJ would call him for a status report, and Corey was always hungry for the sounds he might hear in the background. Other than that, his only human interaction were with the people of Kashmir. They had all generally accepted him as just another walk-in, but he tried to keep his interactions with them light. Thank you to the girl at the coffee shop, a nice day to the guy at the grocery store, a nice weather, ain't it, to the old-timers at the general store, and then it was back to business as usual. He liked that. It made it feel like a community and less like a job. The cameras, however, were new. They had arrived a few months ago, 2 large crates of cameras with housing. Excuse me. Try that one again. They had arrived a few months ago, 2 large crates of cameras with housings, and a note telling him where they wanted them and where they didn't. There's a jumpsuit in the box, BJ had told him the night after the box arrived. Take one of those white vans on the work orders in the envelope and be sure you get them all put up over town. And what if someone sees through me? Corey had asked, but BJ had just laughed. Kid, these people ignore weird stuff all the time. No one is going to look twice at you. If you're just joining us, we're reading Eye in the Sky, which is our Kashmir story this week. So, pull up a chair. Should be fun. Happy birthday, Lance. Where is Lance? Oh, happy birthday, Lance. Me too. Let's see. Where were we? Better not be getting sick again, I swear. On that score, BJ had been right. With the work order in hand and a very convincing-looking setup, Corey had no problem putting the cameras up all over town. There was one in the general store, one at the grocery store, one in the coffee shop, even one at the Kashmir Intrigue. He had set up about 30 cameras all told, and they all seemed to work through this odd sort of wireless network that had been set up remotely. There were several locations he was specifically told not to set up in, and Corey wondered why the files were so intent on leaving out those areas. Do not, under any circumstances, the order had said, go near the prison or the forgetfulness clinic. You may set up a camera in the parking lot of the Botanical Gardens, but you should not attempt to set up one inside under any circumstances. The hospital will also be off limits for medical reasons, and if you see the old man and his grandson, leave immediately. That seemed to be the other part of his observation job. Avoidance. He had files on several of the townspeople and strict orders that they were not to see him. People like Dr. Winters, the warden of Stragview, Jack Register and his grandson, Marcus Carmichael. The mysterious owner of the Botanical Gardens was another one, and the hospital was also off limits for some reason. BJ claimed it was for HIPAA reasons, but Corey wasn't so sure. The people in this town seemed way off. Not like mental patients, but like they might be from a different time. Be from whatever, yeah. He had seen a few of them with cell phones, but it was rare that you saw one of them that looked like a zombie. They had computers, but they never seemed to use them for mindless stuff. It was like an updated Mayberry somehow, and Corey didn't understand it. Instead of DoorDash or Grubhub, they had bike meals, and they called them on the phone tree to make their orders. They had live music in the park. They had monthly celebrations for community outreach as much as for actual holidays. The town was stuck in this strange time loop, it seemed, and the longer he stayed here, the more things he seemed to forget. It had started with little things. Corey would leave his cell phone on the desk and just forget it was there. He would forget to check his social media, something he'd been fond of since he was a kid. He would forget what day it was. He would forget about the house he had waiting for him back in Arkansas when his deployment was over. He would just think about the town and what it would be like to stay there when it was all said and done. He could get a spot at one of those shops downtown, maybe sell hunting gear or meat or something. Kashmir needed a butcher. The one they had was far from professional, and Corey had some experience with meat and blood. He knew just where he'd put it, too. There was a little shop on Main Street, the one that had held the deli until the owner got lost in the woods. Lost in the woods, Corey scoffed. Yeah, right. One of those things that had come barreling into his perimeter fence had got him. He was sure of that. They had shown a pretty strong interest in his little setup until he'd pumped a few rounds of full-jacketed ammo out of his AR. He'd been on top of the bunker, too. No sense getting on eye level with those creatures, if he could help it. They didn't seem to have an eye level, not that he could see, but the way they moved reminded him of hunting cats. They were sleek, quick, deadly, and he'd chased at least one of them away every week since he got here. He looked up from his daydream and saw someone coming out of Libris talent that a shop that had cropped up in Old Town. It was the same pretty boy and his aged corpse of a boss, Mr. Richard T. He'd gotten an emergency folder on that one. Richard T. Seraph was in the same level of spooky as Dr. Winters or the Warden of Stragview, no name included. As they walked up the street, Richard T. looked right at the camera as it hung from the pole and seemed to give it a little wink. Corey sat back a little, not really liking the attention of that fella in the least bit. His mother had an old illustrated copy of the Phantom of the Opera when he was a kid, and the guy walking up the street looked like an old ghost when he... I rambled a little there. Looked like... Whoa, what the hell? Looked like the old ghost when he'd taken his mask off to show Christine. His mother, he thought, that was someone he hadn't thought of in a while. He tried to remember her, but her face slipped away just as easily as it had slipped in. It didn't matter, he guessed. She was just another ghost in a town of ghosts. He wondered where all the video feeds were getting fed to. Back to BJ, he assumed, but where was he sending them? The Pentagon, the FBI, the Illuminati, who the hell knew? As long as his checks kept clearing, Corey didn't much care. He wanted... If I could read... If you're just joining us, we're reading our Kashmir story for the week, so pull up a chair. He watched Richard T. and his assistant head down to the diner, where they bumped into Pamela Winters and Julia. Dr. Winters gave him a look that could curdle cheese, but he just held the door open for her and let them in first. At the general store, Wayne Stokes was buying coffee and eggs. Wayne had replaced the fella Corey had shot outside the doctor's office, and this one seemed to know how to keep his nose out of business. He hadn't been scrutinized too strongly since the reporter's death, and that was just the way he liked it. Corey sighed. It was a slow camera day. He grabbed his coat and decided to head to the... If I could talk. He grabbed his coat. He grabbed his coat and decided to head to the coffee shop so he could do a little people watching. People watching was his favorite pastime these days. Large chai latte for Caleb. Corey raised his hand and went to grab the drink. Then he took it to the table near the back wall so he could watch her when she came in. She hadn't been doing very well. Hey, Valinar, we're glad you could make it. Hadn't been doing well lately, but she still came in every day at 4:30 to get her usual. She wanted a cookies and cream espresso with cold foam, 2 pumps of vanilla, and extra ice. That hadn't been in the dossier, but what had been in there was that this one was dangerous. He didn't have long to wait. She came in about 5 minutes later, her mousy brown hair falling into the bun. Bah. Her mousy brown hair pulled into a bun, and her glasses pushed up on her nose like a librarian. It was hard to believe that this one was on the agency's most wanted list, but he'd seen stranger. They also wanted her alive, so that was going to be a little difficult. Dead was usually easier. "Hey, Candace, back for your afternoon treat?" the barista asked, as she pulled the beverage from beneath the counter. Corey had seen her make it not 5 minutes ago and stick it beneath the front counter. You couldn't have done that with very many customers, but Candace was just about as regular as a train. "Thanks, Ruby. I need this little pick-me-up. If I could talk. I need this little pick-me-up in the afternoon. Could I also get an iced latte with cold foam? I'm meeting a friend for coffee." The barista gushed, but all Corey heard was "friend." Well, shit. That was going to make things interesting. He picked up his drink and decided that today wasn't going to be the day. Maybe next time, but not today. He'd catch her on her own and make his move. But for now, it was all about observation and intel. And there you go. That's our Kashmir story this week. Let me fix a couple of things I noticed here. The cast of characters is getting pretty big here. I think I'll introduce a few new ones, but I think we're going to stick with some of our regulars too. Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, each one of these Kashmir stories, Blondie, seems to add a new little layer to the whole Kashmir story. I'm glad you guys liked it. It was a fun one to write. Let's see. I think maybe we'll read our Friday story now, and then we'll finish off with parts 3 and 4 of Indians of Kawakala Mall. They're really pumping by today. I'm going to have to take my time here. If for those of you just joining us, we've got the Douglas Gage books in. If you'd like a copy of your own, you can buy one on Amazon, or if you're part of my Ghostly Reader tier, your signed copy will be arriving pretty soon. I thought they came in pretty good. I liked the cover. It's supposed to be over 300 pages in it, but it doesn't look nearly big enough. I think maybe they embellished a little bit there. But it's a biggie. It's got like 40-something chapters in there. Here, I will provide. There we go. One of these days, I'm going to narrate it and put it up on my channel. Hopefully. Well, I'll put it up on Audible. I guess one of these days I should probably read it for the channel, though. Let's see. Okay. So next, we're going to read our Richard T. Seraph story, which, as many of you will recall, he is in Kashmir now, so he gets to be part of our Friday lineup, which is cool. Mr. Seraph is buying some very particular talent today. So this one's called Kicking Up His Hooves, and I hope that you enjoy it. Mr. Seraph looked at the man like he might be insane. This was what he got for moving to this backwater. When you dealt with city people, you got writing talent, debate skills, or culinary expertise. When you came out to the sticks, because you were afraid of supernatural entities that could hurt the people you liked, then you got, well, this. Instead of sitting in his office, Mr. Seraph was now getting pig crap on his boots as he looked at what was likely a fine specimen of porcine persuasion, but just looked to him like a muddy pig. And you say that, He looked at Mr. Manderley, the oaf in the overalls, who was standing barefoot in the stall like his toes weren't squelching and God only knew what. "Wilbur," he said proudly. "Right. You say that Wilbur has a talent for dancing." "Yes, sir," said the man. the man said. You ever been to a state fair? Sadly, no, Mr. Seraph said, with a smile that didn't seem quite genuine. When the call came in that morning, Lucifer had offered to go in person. He had spoken to the man for nearly 30 minutes before agreeing to a home visit, and he'd seemed gleeful when he hung up the phone. He had grimaced when he checked his watch, though, saying that he'd made lunch plans with Juliet, and he didn't want to break them. When Mr. Seraph had offered to go instead, Lucifer had smiled and shaken his head. These are down-home people, boss. I grew up with these kinds of people, and I know what they expect. They want to have a little coffee on the porch, talk about the weather, talk about how the high school team is doing this year, talk about the storm of '97 or some such thing, and then they want to get down to business. You're a little too brusque for these sort of folks. They'll peg you as a city slicker from the jump. Mr. Seraph wanted to be offended, but the boy's analysis was correct in many ways. Lucifer Marvelous Jones had been accused of many things, but poor judgment was rarely one of them. You don't think I was always some grinning specter in a suit, do you? He asked, reaching for his hat. Why, I once walked the earth like a pestilence, trading for livestock and precious metals as often as I did for talent. Why, I could charm the most skinflint musicians and the hardest-nosed orators and the... Allergies are getting bad, I guess. And the hardest-nosed orators in any village, and usually leave them weeping once I'd left town. Yeah, said Lucifer, but this is the South. They've been writing songs about deals with the devil since they could hold a fiddle. They'll see you coming a mile away. Mr. Seraph had laughed and shook his head. Tell Miss Juliet I said hello and enjoy your lunch. Make sure you meet her at the diner, however. My sister will probably eat you alive if she sees you lurking around her office. Lucifer smiled and thanked him, but now that he was standing out here in the pig pen, looking at a large, muddy creature that seemed to be more... Let's try that again. Sorry, guys. My allergies are playing hell tonight. I don't know what's going on. Looking at a large, muddy creature that seemed to be more talented at fly flicking than dancing, he wished he had let the young man go about it. It had been... how long? How long had it been since he'd stood in a pig pen? 100 years? 200? Time was funny, but it seemed more honest than his usual work. Mr. Seraph, Saray Olagrandor, in those days, had been a trader of livestock and other sundries as he looked for real talent. The local children had called him Sari Clanker because of all the bottles. He had stored the talent in bottles back then because it was easier to transport than books. In those days, people weren't as fond of books as they were potions and miracles, and Mr. Seraph had reinvented himself many times over the years. Well, the man said, hooking his thumbs into his overalls, in his day, Wilbur was the best dancing pig in 5 states. He went town to town with the fair, entertaining people and making them smile. Wilbur, he yelled, and the pig flicked his ears and seemed to look up. Show the man how you do. That really isn't. But then he turned his head and noticed that the man had picked up a fiddle from the nearby stump. Did he just leave it here? Mr. Seraph wondered. When he struck up a tune, the pig jumped up like he was on fire. He started shuffling around, left foot up, right foot up, shimmying and dancing like a disco queen in a mud puddle. Mr. Seraph had to give it to the little oinker. He was really going for it. He could see little ripples in the mud as... Oh, sorry, guys. Whew. He could see little ripples in the mud that Wilbur had been sleeping in, and it was likely the most energetic the pig had ever been. The problem, however, became apparent pretty quickly. Wilbur was a fine dancer, but every time he came down on his back left leg, the pig grunted and jumped visibly. Mr. Seraph looked at the leg critically and could see a slight twist to the extremity. It was probably a break, but Mr. Seraph thought it might be just how the pig's back leg was growing, due to lifestyle, diet, or 100 other things. When it finished its dance, Mr. Seraph nodded, clapping a few times as he turned back to Mr. Manderley. Very impressive, but I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to do that. Looks like that back leg is paining him some. The smile slipped off the farmer's face, but he hid it well as he put down the fiddle. He come down wrong on it last year when he was stepping off a cattle car. Doctors say it likely won't heal right, and eventually it'll make it so he can't walk no more. Doctor says if he'd stop dancing, then he might be able to walk on it for the rest of his life, but Wilbur loves to dance, and I can't force him to stop on his own. That's why I called you, Mr. Seraph. Mr. Manderley led him back to the porch and offered him a rocker and a glass of sweet tea. Mr. Seraph accepted the chair, but declined the tea. It had been sitting out like it was waiting for them, and he could see several flies doing the backstroke in it. Mr. Manderley didn't see them, or he didn't care. Mr. Seraph tried not to wince as he drained half the glass and most of the flies, belching loudly before going on. I hear people tell that you can take talent away. They say that when you take it, it's gone, and they never go back to it. That's what I want for Wilbur. I tried just not playing, but Wilbur, he gets so sad without his dancing. Yeah, I can tell he does. Sometimes I come to see him and he looks up at me like he's saying, "Come on, Charlie, saw that fiddle just one more time for me." I don't want him to suffer, but I don't want him to do himself mischief neither. Can you help me, Mr. Seraph? Mr. Seraph took a deep breath and plastered his best smile back into place. I believe so. I don't know what I'd be able to offer you in compensation until it's done, but Mr. Manderley cut him off with a wave of his meaty hand. I don't want no money. If it makes Wilbur not hurt himself, then it's worth it to me. Mr. Seraph nodded and rose from his rocker. Then there's one thing I need from you. Name it, said Mr. Manderley, before rising ponderously from his own chair. I need you to loan me your fiddle, just for a little while, he said, and he saw the look of piggish greed on the man's face. I need it to draw out the talent. No one but me has played that fiddle since my daddy died, he half growled, reaching down to finish off the glass of tea in one swig. You promise not to break it? We're reading our Richard T. Seraph story for the week, so if you're just joining us, have a seat. It's just getting good. Me too, Valinator. I like that story. We should be picking it back up pretty soon, I think. I've been trying to get in touch with him and see when he wants to do it, but I think he's exploring other venues at the moment. He definitely wants to go back to it, though. Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot of good voice work over there. I will be very gentle, Mr. Seraph promised, stepping back towards the hog pen. My father insisted that all his children play an instrument. My sister plays the cello, though I've never heard it. My older brother plays the lyre. though sometimes it seems to play him. Mr. Seraph bent down and picked up the fiddle, marveling at its craftsmanship as he drew the bow across it. It was marvelous, something that had likely been passed down through the generations, and he understood the man's trepidation about giving it to him. This was a work of art, and he couldn't imagine anyone just leaving it out here on a stump. If there was anything here with power, it was probably the fiddle, and he had a definite itch to play it. Me personally, I like the classics. I liked all the stories of my uncle and his fiddle, so I decided to take it up too. It served me well over the years. Mr. Seraph took a bottle from his pocket, a simple thing with a rubber stopper, and set it on the fence post of the hog pen. Wilbur looked up when he saw the fiddle and seemed to wag his little tail. Even injured, it was clear that Mr. Manderley had the right of it. Wilbur loved to dance, and if they didn't get the talent out of him, he'd dance himself into a slaughterhouse or a string of sausages. Wilbur shivered when Mr. Seraph struck a long note on the fiddle. He began with something familiar, something by Chopin or Mozart maybe, and then began to speed up as he grew bolder. He was playing something fast and deep, the notes sawing through the trees like angry bees. Wilbur was dancing and jigging like his life depended on it. His little hooves were really working. And as Richard T. Seraph looked down, he was surprised to see that his little glass bottle had become a mason jar, and the jar was half full. Bum leg or not, Wilbur was moving like something his size had no business moving. He would have probably started dipping and kicking like a Cossack having a panic attack if his little legs would allow it. To Mr. Seraph's continued surprise, Mr. Manderley was also dancing. He was less coordinated, but no less enthusiastic than Wilbur. The man was sweating and wheezing as he did so, do-si-doing and promenading left and right with invisible partners, slapping his knee and bucking and winging. It was probably the most activity the man had shown in years, and the jar just kept filling. The mason jar became a tall boy, then a large thing for storing preserves or jam, then a jug like a moonshiner might drink from. Mr. Seraph wanted to stop playing, but he was quite unable. The music had a hold of him, too, and as the pig and its master danced and danced, Mr. Seraph sawed the fiddle and played and played. It had been lunchtime when he arrived, but as he played, the day just went on and on. The pig and the man were shaking and gasping. The old demon was sure that smoke would begin to rise from the instrument, and as the talent finally finished, he was left with a jug that looked gallons deep. It was a clay monstrosity that stood nearly a foot tall, but as Mr. Seraph picked it up, he could feel the weight as it shrank to something he could put into his pocket. Mr. Manderley lay in the mud of his dooryard. Wilbur was snoozing in the mud of his pen. But the old farmer snorted when Mr. Seraph stuffed the check into the front of his overalls. "No, sir," he wheezed. "I said I didn't need—" "Mr. Manderley, your pig gave me more talent than a troupe of backup dancers. You can cash that check, burn it, or blow your nose with it. But talent like that requires pavement." Yeah. Can't talk today. But talent like that requires payment. I've doubled it also, because I wish to purchase your fiddle. It's a marvel, and I don't think you'll need it anymore. He expected the old farmer to argue, but instead, he just nodded. Unbeknownst to him, Mr. Manderley had given him his fiddle-playing talent as well. It hadn't been much, a squiddle of raw talent, but it would mean his fiddling days were done. Mr. Seraph looked at the instrument tucked under his arm. He liked the way it felt. He liked the way it sounded. And it would be wasted here with no one to play it. "Have a good evening, Mr. Manderley," he said, taking his leave as the pig and the owner slipped back into unconsciousness. So much talent from a farm animal, Mr. Seraph reflected. Kashmir was full of surprises. Alrighty, and that's our Richard T. Seraph story for the week. Ooh. I told some of you in Discord that you'd never guess where he was getting talent from this week, and I hope I succeeded there. It was certainly a surprise. Well, goodness, we're over halfway done. I got to start writing those stories longer, I guess. They really get away from us here. But we've got 2 left. We're going to finish up our live stream with part 3 and 4 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall. I think there's only going to be 5 parts, but there may turn out to be 6. I don't know. We shall see. Let's see what everybody's talking about here. Mortuary series got a contract. That would be cool, Lou. Rox and I have talked about it a little bit. It would be great if we could pitch it to something and see it, get made into a TV show. But, maybe someday. I liked True Blood, but yeah, the last season was a little wonky. Yep, I hear that, Valinator. It's just muggy here in Florida. Muggy and thick, and the seasons are starting to change, so it's getting even worse. Click that down. It's getting my cold in here. Alrighty, so I know, Blondie, you would never have guessed when we started reading the stories about Mr. Richard T. Seraph that he'd be getting talent from a dancing pig. Definitely not the direction I think anybody thought the story was going to go. Well, let's read part 3 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall, and then we'll read part 4, and then I guess it'll be time for So Long. But for now, I hear that, Leia. I hope you find some cheap car batteries. I think the last one I had to pay for was $120, and that was for my little Focus, so it doesn't take a very big battery. But at any rate, for those of you who need a catch-up, the story is about a security guard who works at a mall in an undisclosed place, because he hasn't told us where it is. He works security there, and he is not supposed to stay after hours. And one night he does, and he runs afoul of what he thinks are intruders dressed as Native Americans. And he hides out in a broom closet. They find him there the next day. He kind of gets the riot act from his boss, and one of the janitors, Greg, leaves him a note to come and see him that night at a local bar. So, let's see what Greg gets up to here. Yeah, that's a little much, Leia. Goodness. Whew, that's way too much. Alright, let's get it going. I pulled up outside of Mel's that afternoon, full of questions. I hadn't slept a lot that day, but I'd get some rest that night after I got my answers. Hey, Nancy, long time no see. We're glad you made it, Nancy. I could see Greg's little car parked in... I could see Greg's little car was parked in a lot out front, so I figured he had been there for a little while. He had to clean the mall tomorrow morning, so he probably wouldn't be here late. If I was going to get answers to my questions, then I would need to be quick about it. Greg was sitting on a stool near the back of the bar, and he had someone else with him, someone I didn't know. The guy sitting beside him had long, dark hair and a tanned complexion. I stopped for a moment when I saw him because it looked like someone had taken one of the natives off the mural. He wasn't grinning, however. In fact, this fellow was stone-faced as he listened to Greg talk. The two looked up as I came in, and Greg smiled as he waved me over. "There you are. Weren't sure we'd see you. This is Terry. He's the tribal representative for Kawakala." "I really wish they would change that name," Terry said with a roll of his eyes. "It's not even like it means anything. It's just something vaguely native they slapped together." Terry is also one of the chairmen for the protests that are going on during the events we find. Sorry, guys. I'm drowning in snot over here. I'm sure you wanted to know that. Protests that are going on during events he finds to be unseemly. "So, most of them," I interjected, and that got just the slimmest hint of a smile. "Most of them," he agreed. "I asked him here so he might be able to shed some light on the situation that you may or may not have been witness to." Terry extended a hand, and I shook it with only minor trepidation. "So, why don't you enlighten us and tell us what exactly it was you saw?" I started out telling them the story that I had told my boss. Some people had broken in. They had checked. Chased. I don't know why that says checked. Chased me out, and it had all been very scary, and I had hidden in the maintenance closet. When I was done, the two of them looked at each other, and it was pretty clear they didn't believe a word of it. "Okay," Greg said before he took a sip of his drink. "Now, why don't you tell us what really happened?" I sighed. "Okay, so I told them what I had experienced again, but this time I told them about the mural and how the images had gone away when the natives had chased me into the closet. It was weird," I told him, as the bartender brought over another drink for me. "I didn't realize what they were until it was almost too late. I just thought I was hearing mall sounds that I wasn't used to. When I started seeing shadows, I almost dismissed it as my imagination." "It's a good thing you didn't," Greg said. "Otherwise, you'd be just another statistic." How many people has the mall claimed?" I asked, taking a sip of my PBR. 15 in all," Greg said, "though most of them were before the 9 o'clock curfew. The mall claimed 9 guests, 4 maintenance men, 2 security guards. You've heard about the security head they found in the fountain, I suppose?" "Not until today," I said. "Mr. Martin told me about it, though I think he meant for it to be cautionary." Terry laughed, and it caught me by surprise. I'd almost forgotten he was there. "Of course he would. That old crow's been squatting on that carrion pile for a long time. He picked the land up at an auction for next to nothing, and then put that multi-million-dollar monstrosity on top of the graves beneath it. Terry's family should have owned that land, but they were displaced, you see, and the government took it. They stole it," Terry shouted, drawing some attention from the bar. "They stole it from us, just like everything else. It should have been given to us when we left the reservation, but instead, they sold it to that trickster. We used to protect..." Yeah. "We used to protest outside the mall, but then they trespassed us from the grounds, and now we can't come within 100 feet of it. We wanted that land so we could set up housing for our displaced people. Instead, they threw up that monument to opulence. It makes me sick. Terry has been trying to petition for the return of their land ever since they built that mall. Martin says he's willing to sell it to the tribe, but he's asking way too much for it. The tribe can't get that sort of money together, and he knows it. So he gets to look sorrowful and philanthropic while still making a pile of money. If you hate him so much, why do you work for him? I asked. And Greg shrugged. Because, like you, I also have bills to pay. Terry called for another, and I started to notice a small collection of glasses in front of him. He and Greg had clearly been here for a while. The man's face was beginning to darken with color, and it was pretty clear that the conversation and the alcohol weren't mixing well. He's a snake in the grass. He knew he could get rid of us because he spends a lot of money in Kawakala, and his friends... Try that again. And has friends on the council. That's why I don't blame Cleary for what he did. It's a fitting punishment for what that snake did to us. He looked up guiltily then and turned back to his cup as if he had said something that he shouldn't have. There you go. Word soup there for a minute. Who's Cleary? I asked, looking back at Greg. Greg shot Terry a look like he needed to watch his mouth. Cleary was a local artist. His family went and hid in the hills with some of the other families when the people came to take them to the reservation, and he's part of the earliest group of protesters. He drew beautifully, and when the mall started coming under fire, he was hired to paint the mural in the food court. You're kidding me, I said. I assumed that was some kind of joke or something. They made all the natives look like savages. Terry looked like he was getting mad, but I blundered ahead. No disrespect, but you know what I mean. They all have these big, creepy grins, and they kind of look like cannibals in an old novel. That thing, it used to give me nightmares as a kid. It was supposed to, Terry insisted. It was supposed to make you scared. These were the proud warriors that stood against the westward expansionists, and now they look out over the fruits of his labor. He spat into his beer bottle. Mr. Martin hired Cleary because he thought it would help smooth things over with the local tribes. If one of their own was making art in the mall, then it might show a little solidarity. But Cleary had other ideas. But that wasn't all of it. Hang on. That sounds a little bit more like Rayford. Hang on. But that wasn't all of it, Terry cut in. Cleary was someone who believed in the old ways, the ways of our ancestors, the ways that used to keep the settlers from feeling Try that again. The ways they used to keep the settlers from feeling comfortable. He grunted as Greg kicked him under the bar, and I sighed as I decided I'd had enough of this pussyfooting. If they had invited me out here to tell me old stories, then I was ready to get this over with. Why did you invite me out here? Clearly it isn't just to hear my story, so why did you need me here? The two of them looked at each other, and I could almost feel the silent conversation between them. There's a problem, and we wanted to know if you... if I could fucking read. I could almost feel the silent... If you're just joining us, we're reading part 3 of The Natives of Kawakala Mall. We've got one more part after this, too, so pull up a chair. It's just getting good. There's a problem, and we wanted to know... There's a problem, and we wanted to let you know... If I could fucking read... There's a problem, and we wanted to know what you knew before we brought it up, Greg said. You would have thought we were crazy if we started talking about murals and spirits, if you thought a bunch of kids broke in for some vandalism. We need you to understand what you could be getting into if you help us. Like, really understand. I nodded. Okay. If it helps establish the safety of the mall, then I'm always willing to help. Greg nodded, looked at Terry, who seemed to have suddenly lost his voice, and continued. The protesters are not content to limit their protesting to the town square. They've been trespassed from the mall, but they've always seen it as an insult to their people. Some of the younger protesters have been talking about breaking away from the pack so they can vandalize the mall. They want to get in after dark so they can damage buildings and disrupt trade. They think it'll push Martin to sell the land when his ventures begin to fall apart. I nodded a bit. So the spirits won't hurt them, will they? Terry looked up, some of the anger leaking out of him. The spirits in the mall aren't worried about who's in there and who isn't. They simply come out and menace those inside. We don't know why it's only at night. Neither did Cleary, but if they break into the mall, the spirits will hurt them too. We've tried to talk them out of this, but they're set on their course. They won't even tell us when they plan to do it. That's why we need your help. Why me? I asked. Why not go to Phil or the police? Craig scoffed. The police just think we're trying to stir up trouble, or even more infuriating, that we're prank callers. Phil doesn't think it's an issue and doesn't seem to be taking me very seriously. I'd take... Yeah. Talk, not take. There we go. I'd talk to Mr. Martin, but we suspect he would act in a similar manner. These are our young people. We need to protect them. If you talk to Phil, he might take it seriously. He likes you. He respects you. And he might manage to do something if you can convince him to talk to the police. Maybe they'll take it seriously, too. I sat back, feeling the condensation slide down the bottle in my hand. How had I gotten mixed up in all this? It seemed like my spontaneous decision to stay till my paperwork was done and let me glimpse something that I would have been better off not knowing. And now I was stuck between helping and ignoring a threat to my job. I had agreed to protect them all, after all. And if this was real, then, well, it was a substantial threat. You know, if they catch them in the mall, the cops are going to arrest them, I said, trying one more attempt to weasel out. Terry looked stricken, but Greg only shrugged. Better jail than dead. If the spirits catch them in there, then they'll do more than lock them up. My nephew, Terry's son, is one of those kids talking about breaking in. I'd be real sad to have to bail him out, but I'd be even sadder to have to attend his funeral. You've seen them. You know what they're capable of. We just want you to talk to Phil about it. Maybe bring it up to Mr. Martin. After that, we can... But the bar door slammed open then, and someone came frantically inside. The bartender asked him if... The bartender asked him where the fire was, but when he saw Terry, he made a beeline for him. The two had a quiet conversation, Terry getting a little louder as it went on. And when he spoke to Greg, the older man looked stricken. Looks like we might be out of time. Come on, we might need your help. What's going on? I asked, getting up despite my misgivings. They aren't waiting anymore, it seems. They're heading to Kawakala Mall right now. Oh. Big stretches. Whew, that's part 3. Give me a second to get these stretches out, and we'll move on to part 4. I feel that, Diane. That's been happening to a lot of people. Well, Valinator, if you've got a decent voice for voice work, then I definitely suggest you look into it. I do a lot of the narrating stuff with ACX. I'm sure they'd love to have you. They're always looking for female narrators, especially if they can do voices. Well, let's see. One more, and then we'll call it a night, I think. Alrighty. So, let's move on to part 4 of the natives of Kawakala Mall, and that'll do it for us for tonight. They opted to take my car, since it would be quicker. I'd gone from having a beer in a dive bar to flying down the road at about 65. I'd never been farther from feeling drunk in my life, and the realization that I was about to head back into the hornet's nest was a sobering one. I pulled out my bag phone, the one I kept in my car for emergencies, and started trying to remember the numbers to important people. First came the police, but they were less helpful than expected. Kawakala Sheriff's Department, how can I help you? Yes, hi. I'm a security guard at the Kawakala Mall. There's a large group of people trying to break in. I need some officers to... But she cut me off. Wow, that's a new one. You're like the 4th one that's called in the last 20 minutes. The joke's wearing thin, kid. I stared at the handset as she hung up on me, shaking my head a little. I suppose I hadn't been the only person to call. Maybe some of the other tribal members had called to see if they could nip this one in the bud before it took root. Okay, the police weren't going to help. I needed to move on to my next resource. My hand shook as I dialed Phil's number. Phil would believe me. He had to. And as it rang and rang, I began to wonder if I'd caught him at a bad time. Maybe he already knew. Surely the mall didn't have a security system. The spirits would set it off, wouldn't they? I realized I knew very little about this situation, and that it might be handled even now. If they'd set off the security system, then the protesters could have scattered already. This could be over before it started. Maybe Phil was on the phone with the alarm company. When he picked up on the 6th ring, I wasn't sure whether I was relieved or not. Who the hell is calling at 10 o'clock at night? I got work in the mornings. This better be important. Mr. Garvis, get to the mall as quick as you can. Something's going on. Kid, what the hell are you doing calling me? So, sir, I need you to get to the mall. Protesters are breaking in and are going to get themselves hurt. I could hear him breathing heavily as he weighed what I was saying. And then he started to chuckle a little. Oh, that, yeah, Greg told me about that. It's just hearsay, kid. Nothing to worry about. Get some rest. We need you back at it tomorrow. They're breaking in right now, sir. I'm watching them do it. We both know that the vandalism isn't the worst part of this situation, and that 10 or so dead kids from the local tribe is going to look really bad on the news. The police seem to think I'm joking. I need help before these kids get hurt. Call Mr. Martin. Call the sheriff. Call the National Guard if you need to. But these kids are going to die if whatever it is that's in there gets a hold of them. That shut him up pretty quickly. I thought you didn't see anything last night. I lied. I didn't want to sound crazy when I started talking about Indians chasing me. Please, help me out here. I turned the wheel a little harder than I meant to, my car squealing as it took the curve on two wheels, and it took Mr. Garvis less than 10 seconds to make his decision. Don't go inside, and stop as many people as you can from going inside. I'll be on my way. Where's the break-in? I looked in the back seat, and Terry mouthed, food court. The food court. Gotcha. Sit tight. I'll have help there soon. Then he hung up, and I was left with nothing but me, Terry, Greg, and a big mess that we were on the way to. He's not going to make it in time, Terry half whispered. Hell, we might not even make it in time. We have to try, I said, slowing down a little as we came into the home stretch. I didn't want to get pulled over by a cop who was only doing his job and have to explain why I was doing 65 in a 45-mile zone. Kid, Greg said, and it sounded like he'd been choosing his words for a while, you don't have to come in with us. Terry and I have skin in the game, but you don't have to throw into this mix. Blech. Try that one again. You don't have to throw yourself into the mix. If you want to wait for the cavalry to come, I understand. But I've got to try to help them, even if it gets me arrested when the police arrive. It's a little late for that, I said, cursing under my breath as I missed my turn and had to pull a Yui in the middle of the road. I'm in this now, like it or not, so you might as well get used to the idea. We drove in silence for a moment, me watching for cops as I goosed it up a little bit. What makes the spirits come to the mall anyway? I asked suddenly, glancing back at Terry. Is it because it's a burial ground or something? Terry blew out a breath. It is, and it isn't. There's been a lot of bad energy around this site for a while. Hikers used to go missing in the area. Kids out looking for a place to smooch would get the bejesus scared out of them. People out for a late-night drive would say they saw spectral figures, but really it was Cleary that materialized them. He used some kind of old ritual, something he'd had from generations ago, and he brought the spirits in the painting to life. He intended for people to die. He meant for people to get hurt, and he got his wish. How do we stop it then? I asked, seeing the mall coming into sight. We have to find the totem he used to... Terry thought about how to put it and finally just shrugged. Hold it all together, I suppose. How does it work? Maybe if I can find it, I can stop it before too many people get hurt. Totem could be anything. But it'll be close to the mural. The totem's like a conduit. It helps make a connection between the earth, the spirits, and the medium, the mural. You'll need to interrupt that connection, and it should stop them from coming back. If we knew what it was, then we'd have gone in and done it by now. Speak for yourself, Terry said, but flinched back as Greg fixed him with a withering look. Mark is about to go face to face with our past, Terry. Are you saying you wouldn't have stopped that if you could? Terry didn't say anything, but the message was pretty clear. I thought about it as we drove. So, it definitely has to be close to the mural, right? Correct, Greg said, as we pulled around the Dillards and headed for the food court. The only thing near the mural was the food court and Mr. Martin's office. Mr. Martin had his office at the top of the mural, technically. If something like that was going to be somewhere, I supposed Mr. Martin's office was a good place to start. I had been all over the mall, and I hadn't seen anything like that anywhere. I started to ask, not really sure I wanted an answer. Could it be inside the mural? Like in the wall somewhere? Could be, Greg said, but I doubt it would be. The wall is thick, and the food court was one of the first places they built when the construction started. Unless Cleary was long gaming, I can't see it being in the wall. He did give him that urn when he was done, Terry suddenly put in, and we both looked back at him like we'd forgotten he was there. What urn? Greg asked, craning back so we could look at him. When we finished the mural, he handed Mr. Martin an urn, a hand-baked urn that his daughter or niece or something had made. He said he hoped he could bridge, if I could read. He said he hoped it could be a bridge for healing between his people and the people of the town. But I remember that smile he gave when he gave it to him. It's a bridge, all right, but not for healing. I bet you anything that's what you're looking for. What do you think the odds are that he kept it in his office? I asked as we rounded the corner and saw the doors to the food court. I never got my answer. The scene we wandered up on was pretty awful, and as I put it in park, we snapped to a halt, all of us just staring at it for a while. They'd pried the doors open with a crowbar, and then they had likely poured in and gotten to helling. The ones coming out now, however, didn't look like they had helling on their minds. They were cut, some of them bleeding freely, and they were scattered in a mass of jeans and t-shirts. We got out, a tire half on the sidewalk, and Greg reached out for one of them as he came running past. The kid couldn't be older than 17, and he had a cut on his cheek that was going to make a hell of a scar. Luckily, it appeared he was going to get to keep the eye, though. Nathan, Greg said, shaking the boy a little until he turned to look at him. What happened? I don't know, Uncle. We got in, and then we started breaking things. We were laughing and joking, and then all of a sudden, we were under attack. They looked like warriors, all deerskin and painted faces, and they just hit us. Some of us ran, some of us tried to fight, and some of us are dead. I ran. They felt wrong, Unc. They felt like they were made of bees. Poor kid was shaking all over. Greg let him go so he could run away. Last chance to bail out, kid, Greg said, but I was already heading for the door. I'd come too far to turn back now. And there you go. That's our stories for the week, guys. I'm glad you could be here while we did some reading and while we heard some great stories. My voice is wrecked. I am sorry. Ooh. Anyway, I'm glad you guys could join us, and I hope you'll join us Tuesday for a midday live stream. I'll probably just put it on and chat with you guys while I'm doing stuff, so that should be fun. Any rate, I hope you all enjoyed the show. Thanks to all those that donated. Thanks to everybody that showed up. I appreciate all of you. Love you all dearly. And I hope we'll see you again on the next one. Until then, This is Dr. Plague signing off. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you all again next time.